All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Steel City Commuters Podcast. I am Austin Cairns, joined here alongside Nicholas Brown. And Nick, the streak is over, my friend. We're no longer in person. We're back on Zoom again. What the hell happened, man? What happened?
This was a last minute decision. We've had a lot of issues trying to book the media hub, trying to figure time, trying to get everything out. So we decided, let's do a podcast. I have to be honest, I was literally dozing off about 15 minutes ago. And so Austin was like, well, let's go for it. And I'm like, yeah, why not? It's only 8 o'clock at night. Who's going to bed at 8 o'clock?
Of course, of course. And there's a lot to talk about as well. Baseball season is finally here. The Steelers quarterback situation is starting to dwindle, and some new player. And we may have a special guest coming on very soon as well. So there's a lot to talk about in today's episode.
Yes, we have a lot to talk about. The Steelers drama continues. It's what everybody, I think, expected. Aaron
Oh, yeah.
Rodgers, there was a report out, caller says that Aaron Rodgers is buying a house outside of Pittsburgh. So that's like a
Hmm.
start. That's like a push to where we think this whole saga is going to eventually end up. But it's nice to see Mason return, and it's nice to see Russell head to the Giants to see where his legacy continues.
Absolutely. And totally off topic before we start our discussions today, Nick. I just thought of this. Pat McAfee show will be coming to Pittsburgh. Do you think possibly that's when Aaron Rodgers signs his contract?
That is a good suggestion, and that is a good idea. When is the Pat McAfee show coming to Pittsburgh? Do we have an official date yet?
We do. I know that they sold out and they're bringing out tickets. If you actually look this up.
That's a really good suggestion. I don't know if anybody has hinted towards that yet. I'm pretty sure that I think that's in the cards, and I think there was some ideas floating around, but nothing is confirmed. But that it is a
Next
good
week.
next week. Then that's a
Next
good
week.
suggestion that all eyes are nearing towards the Pat McAfee show. We know, Austin, it's always good to point this out that when he was with the Jets talking about Aaron Rodgers, he didn't want to continue to do the radio show. They didn't want him to do the Pat McAfee show. And so now he's coming to Pittsburgh, and this now opens up a whole new ballgame. Will Mike Tomlin continue to let him do the Pat McAfee show? What is the Pat McAfee show going to be now, given if Rodgers signs with the Steelers? What's the playbook going to be like? How is this all going to get Mike Tomlin involved? Is Mike Tomlin going to go on the Pat McAfee show? That's a question nobody has answered. And so it's very interesting to see how this debate and watch this all play out, because originally we thought Justin Fields and Russell Wilson were going to return. Then we
Yep.
saw them, they parted ways. Russ was hanging around for a while, and then all of a sudden, poof, he just went to the Giants. And now the Steelers are left with returning Mason Rudolph. But is Aaron Rodgers going to return? And if so, is he going to be number one? How does that all play into Mason Rudolph with his new contract that was just signed for 2 year, 8 million, 4.5 million guaranteed? Where, if you look at the Giants and the Russell Wilson contract, he's a 1 year 10.5 million, but he can earn up to 21 million with incentives. So it seems that Rodgers is going to be coming in. He's going to get a lot more money. I guarantee you more than what Russell got for the Giants and what Mason got for the Steelers.
Of course, of course. And if we're going to go into the Steelers quarterback situation, I feel like something that should be said from Pittsburgh's sake is if you're Mike Tomlin and the Steelers front office and you feel Mike Tomlin went in a press conference and said, quote, he believes that Mason Rudolph can be the starting quarterback of this team. And that's one of the ultimate reasons why they brought him back was a just in case scenario and someone that knows the playbook best, which is something we've talked about on the show previously. My question to Mike Tomlin is why would you get rid of him in the first place then? If you believe he could still be a starting quarterback, what was the point of getting rid of him last year? Obviously, if you get Russell Wilson and Justin Fields for as good of a bargain as you did last year, you don't pass that up. Kudos to the Steelers on that. But both of them were going to be gone within a year, which they obviously are. You just alluded to it. Fields is now a Jet. Wilson is now a Giant. So Rudolph coming back, sure, he knows the playbook better than any active quarterback in football right now for the Steelers' sake. But at the end of the day, if you really did believe in him as much as you're saying that you believed in him, and if you're as comfortable with him starting as you say that you're comfortable with him starting, why would you even get rid of him in the first place? Why would you even close that chapter just to open it back up? It doesn't really fully make sense to me. Now, in terms of signing a safe option because there's nobody left, I understand that. And that's exactly what happened. You let Fields walk, he got paid. You let Wilson walk, he got paid. Rodgers, we all know how stubborn he's going to be. One way or the other, he's going to get paid. And if he doesn't get paid, he's probably going to sit the season out because that's who Aaron Rodgers is. So the Pittsburgh Steelers honestly put themselves in a slump. We talked about this 2 episodes ago when we were going through all the free agents and when Rudolph signed the first time around. My biggest issue with the Pittsburgh Steelers is they're not willing to pay a guy. I know the draft is right around the corner. There's a bunch of underrated names that could be in the Steelers mix. But let me ask you an honest question, Nick. Do we really want to see a rookie quarterback paired with Skylar Thompson and Mason Rudolph? There's no veteran aspect in that locker room.
Exactly. But you also have to think about there were some reports that Rodgers and Metcalf threw over the weekend in a session, and there was some reports. Steelers insiders were trying to talk about this and trying to they didn't want to confirm it, but they said, "Hey, that's great." It just seems that this pairing is going to be very unusual. Is Mason Rudolph going to be able to connect with George Pickens, DK Metcalf? Is Rodgers going to be able to connect with DK Metcalf and George Pickens? You have the top wide receivers right now in the NFL, and again, you're lacking a quarterback. It seems this is a scenario that you literally rinse and repeat every year, and Steelers management is okay with it. It seems that they're not blindsided by this. They're not, worried. Where this is a common thing every year, and so now you have to ask the question: what happens if the Mason Rudolph thing is going to work? Maybe it does work. Okay, Austin. Maybe he's going to start the first 6 games. But just like Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, what they did is they rotated after 6 games. Don't you think you need a really good backup just in case your QB1 doesn't work out? And if so, who is that? You get somebody from Texas Tech? Do you have to go out and draft another quarterback on college that's just coming out as a senior, ready for the NFL? It seems that this scene is not even over. It's not even close to being over yet. It's just getting started.
Absolutely. And there was a lot of unproven quarterbacks, some veterans, some younger, that they could have signed in free agency as a cheaper deal if they didn't want to go to veteran route. You talk about a Mac Jones who signed with a new team, a Zach Wilson, a Daniel Jones, a Jacoby Brissett. These are just a few names of guys that the Steelers could have easily signed to a 1 year deal just to at least have a backup on the roster to back up a Mason Rudolph or a rookie quarterback or even an Aaron Rodgers. So they had a chance to sign a quarterback, but they quite literally passed up on every single option that was made available. They had to sign Mason Rudolph because honestly, he was all that was left unless you trade for a guy. But who was there really to trade for? Trey Lance, Joe Milton. There's really no notable names that's proven enough to be able to have some trade value. The only other players that's really available now for the Steelers is Aaron Rodgers, who obviously is going to be asking for 30 plus million a year, not to mention he's stubborn as can be. And then Kirk Cousins, who has one of the worst contracts that I have ever seen. So the Pittsburgh Steelers really put themselves in a pickle here. And do you really sacrifice all that and go all in on those two veterans? Or do you take the safe route and draft the rookie? Or do you just roll with the guy Mason Rudolph who you had in the past before? I don't see the Steelers winning too many games this year. Knowing Mike Tomlin, though, he'll still find a way to get a winning season, probably squeeze into the playoffs, but don't expect more than that.
It's interesting if you look, because I had to look this up to be sure I was reading this correctly. I know I'm sleepy and I'm tired as we're recording this
Yeah,
episode.
Sleeping Beauty. Come on, get with the program.
But Justin Fields for the New York Jets, 40 million for 2 years, 30 million of that is guaranteed. That is more than what Rudolph is getting and what Wilson is getting. How are we valuing Justin Fields more? I know that he's going with the New York Jets. How many games did they win last year? Like 3, 4? Okay, 4. And we're drafting somebody for 40 million, 30 million of it is guaranteed. Please, I would love to talk to these people about these contracts because I think that's one of the worst contracts that I've ever seen when you're trying to draft. Yes, I get he's a legacy Steeler, but 40 million for 2 years and 30 of that is guaranteed when he was benched half of the season, that just seems crazy to me. That just doesn't seem realistic. We're only offering to pay Mason Rudolph 8 million, 4.5 is guaranteed for a 2 year basis. That to me just doesn't even seem right. And we all damn well know
Oh,
Aaron Rodgers is probably going to get 3 times as what you add all these up and times at times 3. He's probably going to want 50, 60, maybe 100 million because he's very pricey. It's just
probably.
these numbers don't make sense and these just numbers don't correspond with who we're talking about. Like Justin Fields, 40 million. Come on. I don't see that. Russell Wilson, 10.5 up to 21 million. You could justify it. not really seeing it again either. It's just seemed this is another season where we're having a poor contracts, and I guess this is the year for it.
Yeah, and another thing that I would like to add on to that as well is the unproven factor that Mason Rudolph brings. Sure, he won a couple of games at the end of his tenure the last time he was a Steeler, and he ultimately started a playoff game against the Buffalo Bills, which they got crushed in. But what has Mason Rudolph really done? If the Steelers really believed in him as much as they said they did, I mean, he was the last quarterback that got to work with Big Ben Roethlisberger before Big Ben retired. That's still part of the Steelers. Mason Rudolph was able to sit and learn behind a first ballot future Hall of Famer in Ben Roethlisberger, yet he was not able to take the keys and do anything with it. In my opinion, Mason Rudolph is a career backup. I'm not going to take away any of his talent. I'm not going to say he doesn't deserve to be in the league. He most certainly deserves to be in the league, but I can't take him serious as a starting quarterback. He is, to me, is a very solid, very viable backup, and he proved that in Tennessee. He proved that in Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh bringing him back, I'm not necessarily mad at it or upset at it. What I'm upset at is that's what all they done. They done nothing else. Skylar Thompson, that's my boy right there. I've been watching him ever since he played at Kansas State. That's not a good quarterback room. That's arguably the worst in the entire NFL. And you look at the Raiders, they have Geno Smith as their starting quarterback right now. Then you look at the Steelers and they got Rudolph and Thompson. I'm sorry, this is not a good quarterback. And the fact that they played Joe Burrow twice a year and Lamar Jackson twice a year and now Myles Garrett twice a year. Yeah, I'm sorry, Pittsburgh. It's a wraps. Wrap it up.
Already, we're already calling it a wraps.
Well, they're still going to find a way to have a winning season. We all know how Pittsburgh is, but call it wraps, Nick.
But we know
What
when
I'm
we
going to
get
give you a quote. I got a quote for you. What can go wrong
will
will
go.
go wrong.
I've known you too long now that I've gotten used to these quotes. But we know that once Mike Tomlin hits his winning season, it's just about decline as ever, decline like we've seen every year. And when you get to the playoffs, you're one and done. There's nothing else to make of it. You can't really
Yep.
go on. That's the soap opera. It's like Hallmark. I love Hallmark to death, but once you get to the middle of the movie, you have the climax. You already have that feeling who's going to be the killer. You're going to watch for a little bit, and then it's just downhill from there, and then the story's basically over.
Yep, no, I totally agree with you. Couldn't agree more. I want to transition though over to another former Steeler quarterback, if you don't mind. Let's talk about Russell Wilson for a second. This is a guy that I talked about. I believe Pittsburgh passed up on unfairly. I believe he could have added some value to the Steelers going into the 2025 season, just simply due to the previous connections that he's had with DK Metcalf back in Seattle. He now has signed a deal with the New York Giants, joining Jameis Winston and Tommy DeVito in that quarterback room. So, Nick, I have a really cool question for you, and I want to get your opinion on this. I plan on talking about it on two Jagoffs later this week. I want to see what the Steel City commuters think of it. Do you believe the Giants are going to draft a quarterback now that they have these three guys rostered, or are they probably just going to roll with Wilson, Winston, and DeVito, Tommy Cutlets?
I think that's plenty right there. I don't think we need to go out and hunt for anybody else. I think once you have Wilson, you have DeVito, and you have everybody else, you're on that path. And if you're valuing Russell Wilson for 10.5 million for a 1 year deal, that's more than, Mason Rudolph coming off here and getting. Who knows? Is Russell Wilson going to be able to make the connections? That's the thing here because he was a little rocky to start. He was able to connect a little bit with players, but he just didn't have that sensible connection that was steady. You knew where he was going. He kind of had an idea. If you look at him in the pocket, he looks great. But once he starts moving around outside the pocket, it does get a little hazy, and you have to be very careful because we know that he's had a lot of issues when fumbling, especially trying to run for himself. It doesn't always work in his favor, and we've seen that multiple times when with the Steelers that he would run in for a touchdown, and instead of just running straight forward, he would try that dive, and the ball would come loose, and right there, those were key points. When you factor in Tommy DeVito, it will be interesting to see the kind of connections Tommy DeVito can make. Who's more on target? Who's more comfortable in the pocket? I don't want to say that Wilson isn't comfortable in the pocket, but Austin, it does get a little bit shaky with him if he goes a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, where Tommy actually thinks, from what I can see, Tommy is actually pretty steady in the pocket. that even if he does move a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right, he's still in his range. But again, once you come out of that pocket and you start scrambling around, that's when all hell breaks loose, and you have to really be careful because from what I can see, Tommy doesn't have one side that he goes to, but if you start to see him favoring a side, he's going to try and change it up a little bit, and that really could confuse the defenders in such a way, but also it really could hurt Tommy a little bit because if he moves the football just a little bit and doesn't hold on tight, that always is going to leave the risk for a fumble, costing necessary points that could come down to the wire after all. But when you make the throws, you also have to look at it too in the passing game. Are they going to be able to make the long field passes? That's really what I'm trying to look at because we know when Russ was trying to make the long field passes, it didn't go quite as well. But again, George Pickens kind of did his best trying to make, reach and doing that. Tommy, I'm not really sure here. They're going to have to really see
No.
the depth of field to seeing how far they can throw because when it comes down to the playoffs, when it comes down to the playoffs and critical fourth downs, and you're maybe 4, 5, 6 yards for a first down and the game's on the line, you have to go for it. And most of the time, it can't be a run game because that's what the offense is, or that's what the defense is anticipating. You have to throw. And how far can you throw in critical situations?
It's going to be a similar song and dance for sure with Russell Wilson and the Giants because George Pickens did have to create separation and make big plays on the fly due to Russell Wilson's inaccurate throws at time. I believe Malik Neighbors, the New York Giants starting wide receiver, is going to have to do a similar thing. And Malik Neighbors is highly talented, so I believe whatever quarterback you give him, he can work some magic and easily get over 100 plus yards and a couple of touchdowns. That's how great of a talent he is. When we look at the quarterbacks more specifically, though, you summed up Russell Wilson perfectly. He has a fumble issue. He's not as accurate as he once was. Ever since his days of leaving Seattle, going to Denver, and then Pittsburgh, this is not the same prime Russell Wilson that we're used to. This is not the same Super Bowl champion Russell Wilson that you were used to. In terms of Tommy DeVito, he'll be lucky to make the 53-man roster this year. And Jameis Winston, I can still never forgive him for that 30 for 30 that he threw in Tampa Bay. 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions in 1 year. I don't know how you do it, but Jameis Winston did it. So kudos to him. By the way, Jameis Winston is absolutely brilliant as a personality.
So if
I
you're
love. Good.
Well, I was gonna say, if you're trying to build your playbook for next year, because this is already what you got to think about when you're building
Yeah,
your roster for next year for NFL, for when you're betting, and you're looking at these players, would you put a Russell Wilson that he could target so many times that a lot of these players can make them connections, especially the Giants wide receiver who you just mentioned? Are they going to
neighbors.
be
Yeah,
able to make those connections? Like, can you see him getting 50 to 100 yards in a game? Like, how are you going
easily.
to have to factor in the Wilson versus DeVito when you play these guys? And that's going to really factor in when it comes to betting. How's that all going to kind of work?
Well, here's the thing: if you can get 100 plus yards with Drew Lock and Daniel Jones as your quarterback, there's no denying that I think he can easily do it with Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston. So, Malik Neighbors is a top 5 overall pick in the NFL draft. He's one of the best players at LSU. I mean, one of the best wide receivers at LSU in history. So, like, I don't have an issue with him at all. I don't think he's going to really struggle as much next year. But my biggest concern is turnovers for the quarterback's sake. Like I just mentioned, Winston has an interception problem. Russell Wilson, like you mentioned, has a fumble problem and sometimes throws inaccurate. And Tommy DeVito, I mean, if he even sees the field, he's also had a bit of a turnover issue as well. So the Giants quarterback situation, it screams turnover to me. And that is not good if you are an offense, and that is not a good sign if you are a head coach, Brian Daboll.
I have to think though, when you look at the Steelers, because there's going to come a time when we have, Mason Rudolph on the line and we're playing here, and you're trying to build your playbook for Sunday for the weekly games. It's going to be very difficult trying to make sure Mason Rudolph is on target because he also has a targeting problem. And you can't rely on DK Metcalf and George Pickens the whole game to be able to make them connections, to be able to stretch and create big plays in a short time information. They can, but it's not always going to be 100%. It's going to be very interesting, though, just to see the lines and stats each week. We're big stats guys, if you could tell by watching our podcast.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
really going to be nailing down stats this upcoming season, specifically looking at the target ratio when passing, when running, how many times he was able to make that connection, what's the first downs, who was able to be flagged the most, because it's going to be a different season this year, especially with DK Metcalf, adding him into this line, adding him into the roster. How is he going to adapt? How long is it going to take? Those are some important questions you have to ask, especially when coming into a new team. Same with Russell Wilson going to the Giants. It's going to take a little bit for him to adapt to the Giants atmosphere because the Giants what won how many games last year? Three,
Huh, I think, yeah.
three, maybe if that. That's really putting a lot of pressure on your wide receivers that have been there for multiple seasons in a row, trying to connect with a new quarterback when he really wasn't even accurate in Pittsburgh. And you go further up north to New York, that's also creating some more um, accuracy challenges.
And let's not forget the division that Russell Wilson is entering too. I mean, you're entering a division with the current Super Bowl champions, that being the Philadelphia Eagles, with Jalen Hurts leading the realm. You have a rookie in Jaden Daniels who's done something we've never seen out of a rookie quarterback before for the Washington Commanders. And then although the Cowboys are in a bit of a slump, you can never count out Dak Prescott either. So Russell Wilson is already entering a pretty competitive division, and he's on the worst team in it. So let's see if he can make some magic there. And in terms of the Steelers' sake, I mean, you're spot on. It's if let's see how DK Metcalf can adapt. And how is he going to feel splitting reps with George Pickens? I mean, he did a pretty solid job at it in Seattle with both Jackson Smith and Jigba and Tyler Lockett, who I believe are both also incredible talents. I'm very excited to see where Lockett signs and JSN being the number one guy now in Seattle finally. But for DK's sake, I mean, he's joining a wide receiver room with George Pickens, and we do know Pickens at times has been stubborn when it came to lack of targets. I mean, that was one of the big fallouts with Deontay Johnson before he departed from Pittsburgh originally. So it's going to be interesting to see how either Mason Rudolph, Mike Tomlin, or whoever the quarterback is going to be for the Steelers. I know Tomlin's not going to be the quarterback, he's the coach, but whoever the quarterback's going to be going forward and how Mike Tomlin can organize all of this going into next season or this season.
It's going to be one to watch. It's going to be tricky because if you can't nail quarterback, that really is going to put some pressure on your team base, on your fan base. When you get into fantasy football league, how are you making these connections and deals? This worries a lot of people.
As it should, as it should. I'm worried about something else though, Nick.
What are you worried about? There's a lot of things to be worried about. But
I'm talking about the Pittsburgh Pirates.
well, that's every season. I don't know why
Eh,
we're acting surprised.
Well, this is the transition into our next topic is the Pirates. They're currently 1-3 right now to start the year. One win against the Marlins, that of course being 4-3, the other three being walk-off losses. As of right now, at the time of this recording, they're also down 4-0 in the bottom of the fifth against the Tampa Bay Rays.
We're making
And
it
this
1-4 tonight.
probably. And they are looking ahead to their season opener this upcoming Friday against the New York Yankees, home opener. Nick, what's your thought on the Pirates, man?
Another season, another life well lived. Honestly, that's how you have to sum it up. I mean, this is every year. They're not out to spend money. I don't see Paul Skeens sticking around for too much longer. Maybe till his contract's up, and he's heading to maybe the Dodgers. It's just this is another season that it's going to be ending up in a disappointment from my understanding. Coaching, it's very poor coaching. They don't pull pitchers out when it's the correct time. I think it was spring training last week. My dad told me this. Not even spring training, but when you have a rotating of pitchers, you're actually supposed to hit the ball. I think in one whole thing, they didn't even hit the ball once. All these different pitchers, all these different players. You're telling me not one of them could get up there and hit the ball.
Nope.
I just don't understand where the Pittsburgh Pirates are coming from. This is another season that this is how it always starts off. And normally, when you start off slow, you end strong, and when you start strong, you end soft. The Pirates always start off slow, and they always end slow. There's just nothing to it. The Pirates never go out and spend money. That's the issue. They don't actually make the investments like the Dodgers, like all these other teams. They pay these guys 20-ish million, if that. I mean, you have to go out and actually recruit, actually practice, actually hit the ball. You don't see any of that, Austin. I mean, this is another season. I don't even get excited if we go to a Pirate game. It's just like, oh, okay. It's another Pittsburgh team that doesn't spend money. It's just like the Penguins. They don't spend money either.
No, they do not, which is why I have been preaching for Bob Nutting to sell the Pittsburgh Pirates. Sell them already, man.
You
Come
want to
on.
create a rally. We can create a rally. There's been multiple rallies that say that to tell Bob Nutting to sell the team, but As you can see, it's gone nowhere.
Absolutely not.
It's gone nowhere. But as a fan, you have to support them, but also at the same time, you actually kind of want to boycott because maybe it will get something through their head. When you are on this, when you're even in preseason and you can't even hit the ball, shouldn't that be a red flag to coaching? Who's coaching? Like, what are you doing? Honestly, I mean, how is this every season? I thought watching the Steelers every season lose was bad. This is actually worse. It's like watching paint dry.
I would actually rather watch paint dry, in all honesty, Nick.
It's that bad, really. If anybody is trying to like make a big deal out of it, it actually is that bad. Like I don't even watch Pirate games anymore, honestly. It's just something that I don't enjoy watching because I know either they're going to lose to a walk-off, they're going to get out, or they're going to try and steal base and they get out anyways, or it's just going to be a fly ball and it's going to be game over. In critical moments too, bottom of the ninth, you think someone would come up, hit a home run, try their best. It's normally a fly. That's how it normally ends.
Normally, I would also like to add on this mismanaged bullpen. That is the big story going into this season. The Pittsburgh Pirates has the biggest mismanaged bullpen in the entire Major League Baseball. When you look at the roster that they have a lot of young, talented guys with unlimited amount of potential. I look at a Key Brian Hayes, a Brian Reynolds, an O'Neill Cruz, a Paul Skeens. These are guys that stand out to me. And it is so painful watching my buddy Greg Brown on air try and make light of this poor, devastating situation. Now, listen, Nick, I don't whistle when I walk by the graveyard, but I will say this about Bob Nutting. If he does not sell this team sooner than later, this is going to be an endless cycle of depression here in the Steel City for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Pitching this year, I was very excited for. I liked getting Jared Jones back in the rotation. Obviously, Paul Skeens is a generational talent. He was the All-Star MVP last year for a reason. But the Pittsburgh Pirates have not been able to find a way to win. Now, thank goodness they're in a pretty bad division. Their division isn't really as competitive as it once was. The Cardinals, they're kind of 50-50. The Brewers, they're up and down. So not the Cardinals, excuse me, the Pirates have a lot of stuff, have a lot to worry about going into the rest of the season. And I will say this, they did actually start off hot the last couple years, but then they slowly drifted. This year, complete opposite. They have just completely wet the bed going into the year. 3 losses to the Miami Marlins. That's devastating.
It's
That's
bad.
disgraceful.
It's
It's very
bad.
bad.
It's
It,
disgraceful.
not
It's
not
everything.
to exactly, not to mention the pitiful performance they're putting up right now against the Rays, top of the 6-4 nothing. Like this is an absolute disgrace. We could talk about this. I know we only have like about 10 minutes left here on this recording, but we could go on for hours about what the Pittsburgh Pirates need to do to change their organization. But I will say this: mismanaged bullpen and a poor pitching rotation is what is killing the Pittsburgh Pirates right now.
I would love to get Greg Brown's take on this because I think he brings and he can shed light what's happening inside the managing room, what's happening inside the bullpen, just to give a bit more context. Because I think as fans watching as commentators, we don't see a lot of these things.
No.
Why? Like, what's going on that you can't even win? You can't even start off the season. You're going to be 1-4 tonight, is my guess. How does this happen every year? Like, this is literally predictable. If I were to predict that they would have a losing season, I would probably be a millionaire by now because they've had a losing season for how many years now in a row? It's been quite some time.
Of course, and spoken to so many different baseball aficionados out there over the last year or so about the Pirates before the season even started. Like we mentioned, Greg Brown. I also got to talk to Hall of Famer Steve Blass. Robbie Ince-Mikowski was a recent guest on Two Jagoff. Said every time we talked about the Pirates, there was always optimism within them because they believe in the Steel City. They believe in the culture that Pittsburgh brings. At the end of the day, even though they suck, this is still the city of champions. Pirates are still 5-time champs. Penguins are 5 times. Steelers are 6. This is the city that's supposed to bring championships and supposed to bring rings. But then when you go back and look at the years of when each of those rings and each of those championships was last won, it's really breathtaking. Like, oh my goodness, we have not won in God knows how long. 9 straight years of of not winning a playoff game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pens missing 3 straight years of the playoffs. I couldn't even tell you when the Pirates were in the playoffs last time. It's bad, Nick. It's very bad.
Pittsburgh sports. I don't even know why people come here for sports. They say
Oh, and don't even get me started on Pitt either. Oh, don't even get me started on
Pitt.
Pitt.
Oh, that's another one. That another fail season. I don't
And
think
the
any,
Riverhounds. The Riverhounds screwed me over last year too.
I don't think anybody locally made it to the tournament this year into playoff.
No, absolutely not. None of them did.
Why? But like this is the questions that these coaching officials or these coaching and players and these higher reps should be asking. If you can't do it after quite some time, you're done. Like you just can't say I need some time to fix it up. This is every year and nothing is being done. This is like making Pittsburgh look bad, but I mean Pittsburgh is already bad if you look at it when you combine all these sports together and all these teams when you have such a dry season each and every year it's just bad. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to shed light.
Absolutely. No, I 100% agree with you, Nick. I feel like this is a good stopping point for our little Pirates discussion because, like I said, we could go on for hours about this. There's just so much here in the Steel City and here with the Pirates that, like, it just, we need a culture change. That's why we're calling for so many players and coaches to clean house. Mike Tomlin, Mike Sullivan, Bob Nutting. Like, we're calling for it for everyone because we need to have a new light here in Pittsburgh because at the moment, the light is pretty damn dim. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it's dim, it's dark, it's creepy.
It's very creepy. I can barely see. I need a flashlight just to see. I feel like I'm at camp right now.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I do want to end off today's episode on a little bit more of a positive note. We were supposed to have a very special guest this week.
We were. But honestly, it's probably one of our favorite guests, and we've actually been experimenting
Yours.
with it some time. Lucas Coons, the other Jagoff of two Jagoffs. He's the other co-host. Lucas will actually be joining us on this very show, on this very episode of Still City next week. Episode 11.
12.
12.
12.
This is
This is
episode 12.
11.
This
Get with
is
the
11.
program, Sleepy.
I'm all out of it. He will be joining us for episode 12. We are very excited to have Lucas come to the studio, and we were going to do it this week, but we've ran into a lot of issues. A
Kind
lot
of my
of
bad. Lot of poor planning on my end, but
poor
it's okay.
planning, but also we didn't book the media hub where we normally record, and it just hit us today as Austin and I were drinking coffee after. I'm like, the media hub is booked this week. That is an issue. So we are rescheduling for next week, but Lucas is not going to be just, one and done. Lucas will eventually be becoming the other co-host of Still City. It's just the way it works. Austin, if everybody doesn't know, is a junior and I'm a freshman, and Lucas is a senior in high school. He'll eventually be coming to Point Park, but he'll be
Hopefully.
taking, hopefully. And if that works, Lucas will be joining me on Still City. But how we plan Still City and how we envision it is commuter students in Pittsburgh, we're eventually going to pass down this line. So once Austin departs, you're left with me, but I'm eventually going to need a co-host because I can't do it all alone. And we're going to eventually find that perfect replacement. But for the time that Austin and I have this year and next year, we have a lot of Still City ahead. I honestly, and I can also announce this too, I will be going on two Jagoffs next month, which is very exciting. So we're going to be doing a lot of cross-checking, cross-fitting with these platforms
A lot
between
of collabs.
Jagoffs. Yes, between two Jagoffs and Still City. You're going to be seeing a lot of us sporadic. We'll be excited to share these interviews. But we are very excited to welcome Lucas to this broadcast to Still City because Lucas is a commuter and will be taking the bus to Point Park. And so us three will be together,
Maybe.
maybe. And then the most exciting part is you have to tune into the Austin Cairns radio show because, well,
We have a-
Austin's going to be off and I'm going to be the replacement.
Sure, sure, sure. Well, I will add on this within our final closing minutes. Lucas Coons has always been a great friend of mine. Lucas, shout out to you, my man. Thank you so much for all that you have done on Two Jagoffs. He, of course, is our social media manager as well. He takes really good care of doing our social media. He's part of the Intertwining Jagoffs with my dad. Those are both the two co-hosts on Two Jagoffs that join me every single week. And Nick, it's going to be awesome to be able to have you on joining us for one of our specials. You're going to be our Kevin Homa or Mr. Jack Dean of the month. So it's going to be very, very nice to have you. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to Lucas coming on next week. I'm not going to lie. I'm probably going to have to wear a bulletproof vest or something or a mask because knowing you two, you're going to gang up on me and bully me.
No, no, that is
Yes.
not the thing.
Bull.
No,
Bull.
no, it is a capital B for bestie because we're all best friends. We're not bullying. Well, I can't. Well, I don't want to get into all the details, but
No, 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 no. I got one for you. That's a capital B as in bullshit. That's what that is, Nick.
I can't reveal what Lucas and I have been talking about and planning because that like is leaving the teaser and leaving the hanger. But I promise you, Austin, we will be getting good content out of this just because I recently had the opportunity to speak with Lucas Saturday evening, and he's listened to a few of our Still City just to kind of get an idea of what we're talking about and where he's coming in. And even Lucas has already said that he hasn't agreed with a lot of my points, that he's 50-50. So when in talking about these points and debating these subjects, Lucas isn't going necessarily going to be agreeing with us 100% of the time. That between
Good.
us three, we are going to have a lot of division and a lot of different takes that eventually Austin's going to be wrong and Lucas and Nick will be eventually right.
Uh-huh. We'll see you next week. We'll see you next week, Nick. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to yet another episode of Steel City. Again, stay tuned for our next week. I don't know what day yet, but next week, where episode 12 will drop with Lucas Coons. Any
It's
final words,
exciting.
Nick?
It's exciting. I'm honestly excited. We were yet on Zoom, but we will be back together. We will be reunited just next week.
Yes, sir. We'll see you all then.